Hey up folks, in this episode of Dog's Dinner I want to talk about a paranormal case that has interested me for a long time, the Enfield Poltergeist. What was to happen to the Hodgson's family between 1977 and 1979 was interesting to say the least. Their small home in a mostly uneventful council estate in the north of London is now considered to have fostered one of the most interesting cases of psychical phenomena in the world. What was the Enfield Poltergeist? It started off as nothing noteworthy, sounds in the wall that could be prescribed to pests, and a general feeling of unease. It was only after Peggy, the mother, saw a cabinet move by itself in her two daughters' bedroom that reality hit her. There was something here. A number of witnesses were said to have attested to this strange events witnessed, including police officers and members of the Society for Psychical Research. Alleged displays of telekinetic power, disappearing objects, as well as odd circular puddles appearing in rooms that no one was in, were prominent while the SPR investigated. All of these things centred around Peggy's 11-year-old, Janet. Perhaps the most interesting form of phenomena on display was SPR member Maurice Gross's ability to communicate with the spirit, initially in the form of knocks and bangs, but eventually into a full-on guttural voice. At first this voice was said to have been heard from coming behind of Janet, but it was gradually accepted that the voice was coming from her. Janet insisted that she did not have any control over the voice and what it said, going on to say that whatever was in the house was on top of her and speaking through her. Gross was able to glean some interesting information from the spirit, a name, William, and the fact that he had died in the house of a hemorrhage. Communication continued for a number of weeks, resulting in several instances of Janet speaking with the gruff tone of William. Upon testing of Janet, it was alleged that she was unable to make the voice naturally, and that even if able to manifest a tone similar, that she would not be able to do it for any length of time. She was also put through a rigorous series of psychological tests. She was discharged with a clean bill of health. The phenomena gradually died down and disappeared as quickly as it came. The family were never again plagued by strange events. In fact, Peggy continued to live in the house for decades before her death in 2003. Needless to say, Janet was gravely affected by the events of her teenage years, and still will often refuse to be interviewed regarding them. The Enfield haunting has become an internationally known case of alleged poltergeist activity and has influenced countless media in the decades since it came to light. Rightfully or wrongfully, little else captures the imagination of people as well as a good ghost story. How much truth is in this case? I'll do my best to provide the information up front so that you can form your own idea. I'll also be discussing my own interpretation of it too. We know that the two girls that are central in this case were young, and one of which was approaching puberty, a fact that most of you will understand can cause a great deal of turmoil and stress in one's life. Children, regardless of age, and whether they realise it, constantly seek some sort of attention. These two girls were no different. As soon as they realised how they could manipulate and ultimately have fun with an ever-changing stream of adults, the phenomena got stranger and more imaginative. At several points throughout the case, investigators would discuss with the family other stories of poltergeists and how this resembled one. Things such as spontaneous fires were talked about, and a time later the poltergeist developed a habit for it. The same goes for the mysterious voice that came through Janet, in that Gross had said, only the evening before, that all they needed now was to speak to the thing. Whether this was intentional or accidental by anyone involved is unclear. One thing that is clear is that the girls admitted to faking things. The amount of times this occurred and under what circumstances is once again not entirely known. Believers have said that it was only smaller and insignificant phenomena and was only done to give the adults what they wanted. The Hodgson family were a very working class and often struggled financially, This was mostly due to the fact that their father had left them some time prior to the event. The divorce, something relatively uncommon in those days, brought great stress and burden to Janet's mother, Peggy. Monetary gain is not something that can be overlooked, although once more, it's not entirely clear to what extent, if any, their family benefited. What we do know is that one of the investigators, Guy Lyon Playfair, wrote a relatively successful book about his time there. Were the family compensated for their time and experiences? Maurice Grosse also had questionable intentions, although these in my mind were not negative towards the family, but were in fact detrimental to the whole case. Grosse was a firm believer in the paranormal even before this case, having investigated phenomena before. The turning point in his life had come when his daughter died in an accident. Before this event, he had experienced premonitions and other psychic phenomena. This then led him to the Society for Psychical Research. He never truly got over his daughter's death, and in my opinion found some respite in his investigation of the house in Enfield only a year later. He became obsessed with the case, maybe because the focal point of the phenomena shared the same name as his late daughter, Janet. In discussing the events that occurred in the Hodgson's household on an assuming road in North London, I find very little evidence that displays much of what happened as anything paranormal. It is clear from any of the pictures of the investigation that there is nothing that shows anything more than children striving for attention. The tabloids and already biased nature of the investigators spurring them on in one way or another. Little is said about Janet's two brothers. Nowhere can I find any information to suggest that they experienced anything at all over the 2 years that the phenomena manifested. There is only a few mentions of one of the brothers away at school, but surely this was not a constant thing. Even the first-hand accounts need to be taken with a pinch of salt, despite some of the reports coming from reputable people. Going into an alleged haunted house is going to cause anyone to have a certain expectation of the place, and second-guess every sound or smell or something unusual. Although things were said to have moved and been thrown, there is little information to say whether the starting point was seen. Amidst the confusion and bustle in the already crowded house, it doesn't take much imagination for us to see that things can be misconstrued and unidentified. Even Lyon Playfair himself pointed out that the whole family was seeing visions or apparitions of faces at windows, shadowy figures on the stairs. The spirit of Bill was not the only voice that Janet seemed to manifest either, although recent media pushes that this was the sole phantom inhabitant of the house. The voice itself, despite Grosse stating that it is impossible for someone to do with Janet's provision, is easily seen through for someone not invested in the case. Ventriloquist Ray Allen has said that the vocal trick is very explicable. Not only that, but all of Janet's voices had the same mannerisms as her own true voice, such things as changing the topic suddenly, or a certain inflection. The inexplicable ability for Janet to have foretold how Bill had died is also often cited as remarkable. No one else allegedly knew of it at the time, and it was an apparent revelation that only came to light after the investigation had concluded. However, if you'd cast your mind back to being a child, how quickly rumours and gossip can spread like wildfire. I have no difficulty seeing how Janet and her sister could find out about a death in the house without others being aware. Macabre talk like that is often rife among groups of kids. It's also worth noting that most people who entered the house were not fooled by the girls' pranks. In fact, it seemed it was only the lead investigators and some of the sensationalist media who really pushed the idea of there being a genuine paranormal phenomenon occurrence. Even the SPR itself was unsure of the investigation's claims and the results. The phenomena is said to have continued even with the children not being present in the house, although what type of phenomena is unclear. Whether it be audible sounds that could be prescribed equally to a ghost or to a settling house, there is little evidence other than the anecdotal to allow one to draw a full conclusion. Janet was also said to have held a mouthful of water and still having produced the voice. Curiously, There doesn't seem to be any recording of this occurrence. I have little doubt that most of the people involved in this case were well intentioned, Gross especially. But to me, this is clearly a childish prank that got out of hand, similar in vein to the Cottingley fairies, which fooled the grandfather of detective fiction, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. All the believers involved insist they were not fooled by the girls. How could they, when they witnessed such strange phenomena through their time there? I don't have the answers to that, but I'm sure that most were swept up in the furor and spectacle of the whole thing. The Enfield haunting is still one of the most prevalent cases in memory, and is often cited as one of Britain's greatest examples of poltergeist phenomena. Regardless of what it was, it certainly is an entertaining story.